Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari 8-bit games, some which I grew up with and some which are new to me. Today is one of the latter. Today we are scraping the barrel slightly because there's not many games that begin with X on the Atari 8-bit, so today we're looking at Xmas House. This was another Turbo Basic game from Kemal Ezcan, who we saw a couple of episodes back with Viromania. And this was also published in issue 45 of Zorg, in this case in December of 1992. So I mentioned last time that Ezcan is now known as Yoda Zhang. And the reason for this is that basically he wanted to change his name. And so he did that first of all by changing his last name by getting married to a Chinese lady, who is now his ex-partner, apparently. And in his words, his first name magically changed to Yoda. So make of that what you will. Where would we be without eccentric geniuses? Anyway, Xmas Home. Let's go play it.
Okay, here we are with Xmas House. Christmas House, I guess. Not Xmas Home, as I called it at the end of the intro. I do apologise for that. Xmas House. Yeah. Trigger or enter. Not much to say. Let's have a look. Alright. So, in this game, we are Santa Claus. You can see on the left. And we are attempting to pick up all the candles, I believe, while avoiding the unwanted attentions of whatever those things are. So this is a game mostly about timing, I guess. That and sensible route plotting. Sorry in advance for the snuffles. I'm recording a big batch of these all in one go while I've got a week off, and as tends to go with weeks off, I got ill. So I'm currently getting over that as we speak. So I'm still a little bit stuffed up. So apologies for any revolting noises I might be making along the way, as most of them are subconscious. You know, the whole wanting to breathe thing. So yeah, I think this is pretty much what this game is. Just a series of mazes with stuff to collect, where you need to determine what the best route around is and how you can reach those things that might seem very difficult to get hold of, and timing your moves very carefully. Oh yeah, that's tricky. No, fire button doesn't do anything, so you can't sort of throw things at them or anything like that. You've just got to dodge them. It's one of those games where you kind of have to get a feel for the handling as well. So you notice that Santa moves by character on the screen. He's sort of moving by graphics 2 size characters on the screen, those square characters we talked about in the previous episode. Not the previous episode, the Viromania one. We talked a bit about the various graphics modes of the Atari. These are graphics 2 sized, but there's something clever going on, because normally graphics 2 can only have one colour per character. And what we got here, as you can see, is multicoloured characters. Effectively acting as, I guess, fake sprites, you'd call them. Interestingly, if you look at some of the baddies, they're not actually moving by character. Some of them are moving by larger amounts, and some of them are actually moving by smaller amounts. I don't think there's one doing that on this level, but certainly on the previous level there was one that was moving by less than a whole character width at a time, which is interesting. Well, this isn't being too difficult so far. I'm sure that will change. Whoops, he says, dying. Oh yeah, getting ahead of them is quite tricky. Game over. I got 53 points. Alright, let's have another go. So as I mentioned in the intro, this was written in Turbo Basic XL, which means that most of this was probably possible to pull off in Basic, but it probably wouldn't have run as quickly. So I mean, this isn't sort of the slickest or smoothest game you'll ever see by any means, but it's moving at a decent pace, and it's got a decent number of things on screen moving at the same time at a good speed. Now, Turbo Basic was much speedier than Standard Basic, hence the name. And so that made it very suitable for programming games. Particularly for those who did not know how to program games in machine code. Because although other languages did exist on the Atari A, I think probably the most notable one was one called Action. That was supposed to be very speedy and quite understandable. But for most people, it tended to be a choice between writing in BASIC and writing in machine code. And what Turbo Basic offered was a nice middle ground. So those who had grown up using Atari Basic to program things, they could use the same skills that they'd learned from their time with Atari Basic, but then they could start using all sorts of other new and fancy features as well. Like I said back when we covered Viromania, one of the big advantages of Turbo Basic is that it added a lot of instructions back into Atari Basic that were present on other 8-bit computers but were stripped out of Atari Basic for some reason. Sort of basic functionality in some cases, like using in-key string to take input from the keyboard. Or sort of left string and right string for manipulating the contents of a string and that sort of thing. And even like something as simple as typing CLS, clear screen, to empty the screen of everything. That's not there in Atari Basic, but that's a basic command, literally. It's sort of one of the first commands you learn in Basic on the Spectrum, the Commodore 64, and various other platforms. And what these differences meant was that when you were learning to program on the Atari, if you were using sort of commercially published books, of which there were quite a few out there, if you were using commercially published books that were sort of multi-format, you'd often have to adapt the programs to work on Atari and find out equivalents of the different things that they were doing. And one of the nice things about Turbo Basic, aside from its speed, was it was a bit more compatible. So it meant you could use a lot more of those instructions that you were looking up in, say, Commodore 64 and Spectrum programming guides. Which was nice. But then, as I say, its main benefit for people was the increased speed that it did, and the fact it was just better at a lot of things. So, as I recall, there were a lot of things about sort of program structure it was very good at. So you could do things like define procedures in it and that sort of thing, a bit like you do in sort of more modern programming languages like C and such like. You still have to number your lines manually. But yeah, there was certainly a lot more you could do with like program structure and that sort of thing. Yeah. Okay. This is a tricky little blighter. This is a simple game, but it's quite fun. I mean, it's nothing special, but it does what it does perfectly competently. And there's a type-in listing to celebrate Christmas. I've seen far worse. How do we get those ones in the middle? Like this. Yeah, this is a pleasant, chilled out little game. When you're dealing with type-in listings, I had certain expectations. They probably wouldn't be quite up to the standard of commercial releases or whatever, but you know, you were getting them for free, so. Oh, excuse me. Oh, to get rid of this cough. It's deeply unpleasant. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Oh, I think with my throat giving out, it's probably a good time to leave it there, isn't it? Anyway, that was Xmas House. An interesting little game. Not a ton to say about it, but like I say, we get to a point where we have to be a bit... have to kind of scrape the barrel a bit down at the bottom of the alphabet. Anyway, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time, as long as I don't die.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. New episodes of Atari A to Z are on Tuesdays and Atari ST A to Z on Thursdays. Check out atariatoz.wordpress.com for a full archive. Do please also check out my other projects moegamer.net, where I explore Japanese and Japanese-inspired games from yesterday and today, and videopackgames.wordpress.com, which aims to catalogue the small but well-formed library of the Philips G7000 Videopack computer, also known as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. You can also support my work on Patreon or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.